highest duty to uphold the rule of law and to preserve the legitimacy of our institutions in accordance with the Constitution. Mr. President, let us act not with haste, but with honor. Let us preserve our republic, not fracture it. I did not swear an oath to defend emotion. I swore an oath to defend our Constitution. Thank you, Mr. President.
My dear colleagues, I vote yes to the motion to archive the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte, respecting the decision of the Supreme Court. It is undeniable that the Supreme Court has the power under the Constitution to declare an act of a co-equal body as unconstitutional, a power known as judicial review. The power allows the Supreme Court to ensure that all branches of the government act within the bounds of the Constitution, and it should be respected. The three main branches of our government, the legislative, executive, and judicial, each is vested with distinct powers and functions by the Constitution, none superior to others. Each operates independently with its own sphere of authority and serves as a check and balance on the others to prevent abuse of power. This is the foundation of our democracy, and it ensures the rule of law, accountability, and protection of rights of all Filipinos. In this case, the Supreme Court has spoken. By a unanimous vote, the Supreme Court declared in clear and unequivocal terms the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte unconstitutional and null and void ab initio for violating the one-year bar rule and due process clause. As a result, the Senate did not acquire jurisdiction to constitute itself into an impeachment court. This decision, finally, is immediately executory. Mr. President, we have heard many good arguments in the recent weeks from both sides. Just today, being the youngest member of this robust body, I have learned so much from our esteemed and distinguished colleagues. But to me, it is simple. The opinion, or the most important opinion, is that of the final arbiter of our Constitution, and that is the Supreme Court. I have faith that the Supreme Court has done their duty and fulfilled their mandate. Being a legislator and a public servant, it is my duty to abide by that decision. Not too long ago, I took my oath of office as a senator, and I swore to support and defend the Constitution, and I adhere to that today. To do otherwise can lead to uncertainty and chaos, and even a constitutional crisis. This is what the rule of law expects from each and every one of us. And to respect the rule of law is to respect our democracy. And that is why I vote yes to the motion before us. Mr. President, dalangin ko sana na marisolba na natin ngayon ito upang mapagtuunan na natin ng pansin ang mga tunay at malalaking problema na hinaharap ng ating bansa at ng ating mga kababayan, katulad ng mataas na presyo ng bilihin, pagkaroon ng wastong hanap buhay, kalusugan at kaligtasan ng bawat Pilipino. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Senator Villar.
Senator Villar, Mark.
Senator Mark Villar is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to vote yes and explain my vote on the matter before us, and to explain why we compromised today on archiving this very important topic. But of course, we must always remember that the status quo is that the Senate has no jurisdiction. So in legal speak, this complaint is null and void. Last July 25, the Supreme Court rendered a unanimous decision declaring the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte unconstitutional, noting that it is barred by the one-year rule under the Constitution and that it violates due process. The merits of this decision are not an issue at issue before us. The sole question we need to answer is whether the Senate should respect the decision of the Supreme Court. And I say clearly and emphatically, yes. The Supreme Court has the ultimate authority to interpret what the Constitution is. No one, including the Senate, can substitute its opinion over the courts in any matter concerning the Constitution. And the Constitution itself, in Article 8, Section 1, entrenches the court's role in interpreting the Constitution and determining whether there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction by any branch or instrumentality of the government. This includes the Senate, even when acting as an impeachment tribunal. Justice Laurel laid down the doctrine in the Supreme Court as the final arbiter of constitutional issues in Angara versus Electoral Tribunal, where it was stated that when the judiciary mediates to allocate constitutional boundaries, it does not assert any superiority over the other departments. It does not in reality nullify or invalidate an act of the legislature, but only asserts the solemn and sacred obligation assigned to it by the Constitution to determine conflicting claims of authority under the Constitution. At dahil nagdesisyon na po ang Korte Suprema, tungkulin po ng Senado na sundin ang desisyon na ito. Sumasangayon man tayo o hindi, dahil nangako tayo, bawat isa sa ating mga senador, that we will support and defend the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, that we commit to obeying all laws and legal orders issued by the duly constituted authorities. Nasa oath of office po natin ito. In staying true to our oath of office, we must abide by the order of the duly constituted authority in matters of the Constitution, the Supreme Court. We must uphold the Constitution. Thus, the Senate cannot acquire jurisdiction to proceed with the trial, much less issue a verdict. Tulad ng sabi ni Senior Associate Justice Leonen, the impeachment process is a constitutional process. And although it is also a political process, it is not isolated from the requirements of the Constitution as a whole. Kailangan obserbahan ang due process, ang tama at makatarungang proseso bago matanggal sa posisyon ang isang individual. Habang iginagalang natin ang opinyon at pananaw ng bawat isa sa mga importanteng usapin, kailangan natin igalang, kilalanin at bigyang halaga ang kakayahan at kaalaman ng mga maestrado ng kataas-taasang hukuman na binigyan ng kapangyarihan ng ating konstitusyon bilang huling hukom na ipaliwanag kung ano ang batas at kahulugan nito at magdesisyon ng pinal sa isyung ukol sa konstitusyon. By recognizing the authority of the Supreme Court on the matter, the Senate does not abandon its mandate and its wisdom as an independent political body, nor does it concede or submit to a co-equal branch of the government. We are simply upholding the rule of law. At kung susuway tayo sa desisyon ng Supreme Court sa isang isyung konstitusyonal, binabaliwala natin ang konstitusyon. Ito ay magdudulot ng isang krisis sa ating saligang batas at lipunan na hindi makakabuti para sa taong bayan. As a functional society governed by the rule of law, we must accord our democratic institutions with respect, value their guidance, recognize their competence, and cherish their independence. Mr. President, pinapatunayan ng desisyon na ito na makakaasa ang tao na ang due process ay hindi lang guni-guni o kasabihan walang katuturan. Na ang due process ay para sa lahat at hindi lang para sa mga kakampi. Isang patunay na mapabisi presidente man o ordinaryong Pilipino, makakasigurado tayo na ang mga institusyon, ang Korte Suprema at ang Senado ay handang ipagtanggol, pahalagahan at bantayan ang ating mga karapatan. Without the rule of law, People may act without accountability. Government leaders may act on personal interest. Individual rights can no longer be guaranteed. Without the rule of law, there can be no justice, no order, and no real democracy. To end, I would like to quote Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Leonen, who penned the decision. There is a right way to do the right thing at the right time. This is what the rule of just law means. This is what fairness or due process of law means, even for impeachment. Maraming salamat po.
Both sides have fought bitterly at the electoral struggle to articulate what they respectively believe to be the correct position or view on the issues involved. Passions had run high as demonstrators, whether for or against impeachment, took to the streets armed with their familiar slogans and chants to air their voice on the matter. Various sectors of society, from business, retired military, academe, denominations of faith, offered suggestions for a return to a state of normalcy in the official relations of governmental branches. Through all these, and as early as the time when the articles of impeachment had been constituted, the court was specifically asked, told, urged, and argued to take no action of any kind and form with respect to the prosecution by the House of Representatives of the impeachment complaint. When the present petitions were knocking, so to speak, at the doorsteps of the court, the same clamor for non-interference was made through what are now arguments of lack of jurisdiction, non-justiciability, and judicial self-restraint, aimed at halting the court from any move that may have a bearing on the impeachment proceedings. The court did not heed the call to adopt a hands-off stance as far as the question of constitutionality of initiating the impeachment complaint is concerned. What lies in here, is an issue of genuine constitutional material which only the court can properly and competently address and adjudicate in accordance with clear-cut allocation of powers under our system. The claim, therefore, that the court, by judicially entangling itself with the process of impeachment, has effectively set up a regime of judicial supremacy is patently without basis in fact and in law, because it is not at all the business of the court to assert dominance, judicial dominance, over the other two great branches of government. Rather, the raison d'etre of the judiciary is to complement the discharge by the executive and legislative of their own powers to bring about ultimately the beneficent effects of having founded and ordered our society upon the rule of law. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the institution that is the Supreme Court, together with all other courts, has long held and been entrusted with the judicial power to resolve conflicting legal rights regardless of the personalities involved in their suits or actions. The court has dispensed justice over the course of time, unaffected by whomsoever stood to benefit or suffer therefrom, unafraid by whatever imputations or speculations could be made to it, so long as it rendered judgment according to the law and the facts. No one is above the law or the Constitution. This is a basic precept in any legal system which recognizes equality of all men before the law as essential to the law's moral authority and that of its agents to secure respect for and obedience to its commands. Perhaps there is no other government branch or instrumentality that is most zealous in protecting that principle of legal equality other than the Supreme Court, which has discerned in its meaning and ramifications through its application of numerous cases, especially the high-profile kind in the annals of jurisprudence. The Filipino nation and its democratic institutions have no doubt been put to a test once again by this impeachment case. Accordingly, the court resorted to no other than the Constitution in search for a solution to what many feared would ripen to a crisis in government. Sa muli, magandang gabi po sa ating lahat. Hindi ko po salita mga sinambit ko na ilang minuto. Yun po ay paraphrase at halos eksaktong quotation ng salita ni dating Justice Conchita Carpio Morales sa Francisco ruling na kinatigan ng mayoriya ng mga miyembro ng Korte Suprema, kabilang na si dating Chief Justice Puno, dating Justice Carpio, dating Justice Ascuna, dating Justice Panganiban. Ano nga ba itong Francisco ruling na pinag-uusapan natin to. Ano nga ba ang pinagkapareho, pinagkaiba nito sa kasalukuyan nating hinaharap? At bakit ko ba ito tinatanong? Ginoong Pangulo, bahagi ako ng Kongresong nagtangka